Hi, I am Eric. You are listening to the Long Box Review comic book podcast. Welcome to the show. And it is time, my friends. It is time once again for the annual tradition with George from Meanwhile at the Podcast. It is time for the annual Christmas Gab Bag. Welcome to the show, George.
Merry Christmas, Eric. Happy holidays, everybody. I've got the Yule log going here. I have got my hot cocoa with no adult beverage in it. It's just hot cocoa. And I am ready to go. Oh, and I'm smoking a pipe. I don't normally smoke, but I'm smoking a pipe. Bubbles are coming out of it, but hey.
You look like your hair's turned all white, and you got this nice bushy beard. Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm. I put on a few pounds.
I know your secret, George.
Like Mrs. Claus says, nobody likes a skinny Santa.
Yes. Well, and no one likes a skinny podcast because we are here as we always get together towards the end of the year for, like I said, our annual Christmas Gab Bag. We're going to talk about some Christmas themed comic books, or at least in my case, some stories, short stories, comic book short stories, because a few of those are a little brief, but I felt like they told a really good story, and I can't wait to hear what George is going to talk about in relation with his three choices. So I guess, George, shall we just get to it?
Yeah, let's do it. Some people may realize that I plan my Christmas Gab Bag almost immediately after the previous one was done. I said this in the intro of our show. By the way, this is being carried on both podcast feeds, so don't be surprised, folks, when you hear this on both feeds. And I thought it was done, before New Year's, before January 1st, 2024 rolled in. I had my three kind of in my mind, wrote them down. I was ready to go. But then I went to a convention in September. And I roamed the dollar boxes. And I found two comics that I would probably have never have bought had they not been holiday themed. One of which you may be disappointed that I just said I would never have bought it because it's one of your favorite characters, but that's neither here nor there. But I'd like to start with one from a company that isn't one of the big two. And you will notice a theme in these stories, and it's not just that they revolve around the holidays. It's that each story has a mystery.
Ooh.
And this is a very good follow-up to, and you know me, I'm always shilling, right, Eric? This is a very good follow-up to your recent appearance on Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow, where you and Mike talked about the Great British Bump-Off, an Agatha Christie-style mystery told in a parody or a satire of the British baking shows. So if you like mysteries, folks, definitely listen to that episode of Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. But we're not here to shill other podcasts. We're here to talk Christmas comics.
We'll shill all, till the cows come home. So if people want us to shill for them, we can accommodate this.
That's right. It is the holidays, so don't forget to Venmo Erickson Cash.
That's right.
Anyway, Eric, are you familiar with the Maze Agency?
I have heard of this book, but I have never read an issue.
Okay. I hadn't either until there was another reboot of this that Scout Comics put out this year. And as far as I know, there was only one issue of it. But I had always heard of the Maze Agency. I'm not quite sure I ever saw it on the rack when it was originally published. And Innovation wasn't the first company to have it. I think it was Caliber Press or something like that. It says it in the letters column here. And I think IDW got it at one point and some other publisher. So the Maze Agency has jumped around over the decades. From what I can tell, based on the one issue I read from Scout and this issue right here, it looks like each issue is a one and done mystery.
The best kind.
And there are hints within each story. There are clues that the reader can play along, which I think is pretty cool. Of course, I didn't realize that until the end, but they're there. You have to have that keen eye because you're reading a mystery. So first of all, Eric, I don't know if you could tell, but this cover is done by Alan Davis.
When you told me that you were going to talk about this issue of the Maze Agency, I looked these up, and that was the first thing that I noticed was the covers. And I'm looking at it, and the original series had Adam Hughes.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that.
Yeah, yeah, and then Alan Davis too as well. So I was not able to order these before our conversation, but at some point I'm gonna track these down.
Yeah, neither Alan Davis nor Adam Hughes did the interior art. The story is by Mike W. Barr, who is the creator of the series. And I'm not sure if Adam Hughes is kind of like a co-creator. I'm not sure. But Mike W. Barr has been the writer on this, I guess, for all of them. I guess he's the one who carries it from company to company as time goes on.
Yeah, I think so.
This particular issue was penciled by Rob Phipps with 2 B's in Rob. Inked by Rick Magyar, lettered by Vicki Williams, colored by Michelle Wolfman. I don't know if any relation to Marv Wolfman, one of your favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And edited by David Campiti. People will hear me turn the pages because I didn't do any of this digitally. I am going to get into any of the extracurricular stuff if time allows. I'm just going to hop into the story now, if that's okay with you. There is a great classic comic splash page that you don't see anymore on the first page of comics. And you see Jennifer Mays decorating the Christmas tree, standing on a chair, decorating the Christmas tree. And her partner, Gabriel Webb, comes on into the room. And at the bottom, where you see the credits, there are 2 wreaths at the bottom of each side of the page. And within the wreath is a headshot of Jennifer in one, Gabriel in the other, with a little scroll on top of each that has their name. So if you've never read this book before, you already know who the main characters are. Jennifer Mays, hence Mays Agency, and her partner in crime, or in solving crime, Gabriel Webb. Gabe walks in on Jennifer decorating the office Christmas tree. They smooch, share some sexy couple banter, and exchange gifts. Jen gives Gabe a watch with the gears exposed that she says reminds her of his mind. By the way, it happens to be Christmas Eve, which will play in later. But of course, a lot of these stories do happen on the holidays themselves. Gabe gives Jen a beautiful necklace with her birthstone, which is sapphire, which is September. Do you even know our birthstone, Eric? We both have our birthdays in December. I'm trying to think.
It's blue topaz?
Blue topaz. That's it. That's what we are. Mm-hmm. You'd think I know these things, but I don't. Gabe is going to spend Christmas in Ohio with his family. Jen asks him to stay in town for the holidays and go with her to a holiday party that evening. He says people are expecting him and he has to go. But when he leaves his watch behind. We shift scenes to the mansion of the Delgado crime family. The head of the family makes a declaration at the holiday dinner table. There's a snitch within the organization. And that person is one of the 8 people at that table. Dun, dun, dun. This causes a bit of commotion, and the patriarch's pregnant daughter, Rosa, leaves the table, and her husband, Gary, follows her. She lets him know that she knows he's the informant. She doesn't approve, but she loves him and wants to start their family away from the family, quote unquote, so they run off. Later, Lawrence, the brother of the patriarch, is found shot in his bed and is rushed to the hospital. Mr. Delgado and one of his enforcers accompany Lawrence, and they are met by Lieutenant Bliss and Sergeant Simmons, who I guess are recurring supporting characters in this title. Terse words are exchanged, and Mr. Delgado storms off to call his goons to instruct them to find Rosa and Gary. He suggests they may seek refuge at his estranged brother's restaurant called the Blue Ruby, which just happens to be where the Maze Agency Christmas party is taking place.
Of course.
And I was very surprised. It looks like Jen has a lot of employees. I had to double check to see, is this the employee, is this the Maze Agency Christmas party? Or is this just a party? But it turns out, a guy comes up and says he gave everybody their Christmas bonuses. So I guess the Maze Agency does a lot of business.
Wow.
Gabe shows up and says he forgot his watch. As if on cue, Rosa and Gary show up in the kitchen of the restaurant. That's when they hear on the radio that Lawrence was shot and he's in critical condition. They quickly leave since Gary feels he's going to be blamed for shooting Lawrence. Alejandro, who is the estranged brother, tells Jen, and Jen calls Lieutenant Bliss, who suggests that she get down to the hospital post-haste. On the way to the hospital, Jen and Gabe have a chance encounter as Mr. Delgado's son beeps incessantly behind them at a red light as he is anxious to get to the hospital. They arrive and find all the players in the green wing of the hospital. Almost immediately, shots ring out in an empty room in the red wing. Oddly enough, it's the same room number as Lawrence's. All the remaining Delgados converge on the hospital, and Jen and Gabe go in search of Rosa and Gary, who have gone to the Star Diner to get in out of the cold. Remember, it's Christmas Eve. Rosa goes into labor just as Jen and Gabe arrive, thanks to some kids that they had paid off to try and look out for them. Jen helps deliver the baby as Mr. Delgado and his enforcers enter the diner. As they are about to put the beat down on Gary, Jen and Gabe explain everything and say the shooter must be colorblind. Eric, I'm going to read the panels, okay?
All right.
Gabe tells Mr. Delgado the would-be killer didn't know that the room that he shot up was empty. He or she thought your brother was in it. Mr. Delgado says, no, the room in the red wing was shot up. My brother is in the green wing. Gabe explains because the killer couldn't tell them apart. The room numbers were the same, only their colors were different. An obvious difference? Not to the killer. He or she is colorblind. And for those who don't know, and Gabe even explains it, the killer can't distinguish between red and green. And then Jen tells Gabe to calm down with the scientific explanation and move on. Anyway, the would-be killer wanted you to think Gary tried to kill your brother, but his or her colorblindness gave them away. I like how Gabe keeps saying him or her because he doesn't want you to know who it is quite yet.
Mm.
And Mr. Delgado says, how? How can you know who's colorblind and who's not? And then they go through a bunch of things that happened within the comic where people specifically said stuff about colors.
Okay. See,
I'm not going to go through all that.
George, I have been listening intently, thinking that you're going to ask me to solve the mystery, and I'm like,
no.
Am I getting all the clues? Am I hearing everything?
No, I'm not.
Thank you
for giving you enough information.
Thank you for not putting me in the hot seat that way.
But I am purposely. Here's a hint, though. I purposely did say a couple of things in my synopsis. For instance, the chance encounter that Jen and Gabe had at the traffic light, where the son was beeping incessantly at them at a red light. He thought it was green.
Right. Wait, did you just reveal something?
I just did. Tony is the killer, or the attempted killer. Okay, so then Tony's the attempted killer. He's caught. The Delgado family not very happy that one of their own, their son, his son is the one who tried to shoot his uncle. But that's a story for another day if there's any retaliation or anything. He is arrested. We move on to the epilogue. Gabe and Jen are coming out of church. She tells Gabe, I'm glad you came to midnight mass with me. Gabe says, I'm glad you asked me. I didn't know you were Catholic. She replies, I don't know if I am anymore, but I've always liked the ceremony and what it stands for. They get to her door and she says, would you like to come in for some hot chocolate? He asks, with those little marshmallows? She says, if you like. As they're sitting down on the couch, she says, in all the goings on, I think you forgot about this, your watch. There's been a little something added this time. And on the back of the watch is engraved, to Gabe, 12/25/89. I love you always, Jennifer. And then they hug in a panel that has a wreath in the perimeter. The panel is actually a wreath, and they hug the end. One of the things you and I like to do when we talk about these books is put things in perspective. And I neglected to say that this is issue 11 of the Maze Agency from Innovation. It is the April 1990 issue. which you could tell by the Christmas 1989 inscription on the watch. It was $1.95. And what was great about this, Eric, is the cover, the Alan Davis cover, is a bit of a wraparound. It's not quite a full wraparound. You can't see, unfortunately. It's a little blurry. It's about, when you open the cover all the way, half of the back cover is a continuation of what's going on the front cover, which is essentially Gary and Rosa with their baby. Rosa has an outfit on with a hood over her head. Gary is holding on to Rosa's shoulder. Jen, Gabe, and their assistant are standing in front of them. Gabe's down on one knee, I guess almost like a manger type of thing, the nativity thing. There are cherubs flying around above, and it says, "'Twas the crime before Christmas," in a scroll that one of the cherubs is holding. And then behind Jen and Gabe, and also on the back cover, are some people descending upon them with guns. But the other half of the back cover is a synopsis of last issue and then a tease of what this issue is, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever really seen anything like that, except, you only see teases on graphic novels or trade paperbacks, but also the last issue blurb telling you what happened last issue. And it made me think, is this part 2 of something? But really, everything they mentioned in the last issue, none of it really applies here.
Well, let alone being on the back cover of the comic.
Yeah. I never saw that before.
It's kind of like more like except for the last issue, this issue part, but it reminds me of book blurbs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They're called innovation, and it was very innovative. How do you like that, Eric? Yeah.
Very nice.
You and I also like to mention a couple of things. So first of all, there are really no ads in here except house ads for Innovation Comics and things like that. However, there is an essay, an editorial from the editor of the comic, David Campiti, who wrote a nice piece in honor of C.C. Beck, who had recently passed away at the time, creator of Captain Marvel, Shazam. So that's all that was. It was called "When Lightning Struck the Final Time," and it was kind of like a nice little essay celebrating C.C. Beck. You know how you and I like to look at the letters columns and things of that nature? One of the letters, and by the way, here I've written down, so this series had been a Comico, not Caliber, I'm sorry. It was a Comico until issue number 7.
Right.
Then issue number 8 went to Innovation. And the letters page has the letters for that first issue for Innovation, number 8.
Okay.
People saying, it's great to be, I'm glad it found a home somewhere. And one of the letter writers feared that Jen and Gabe's romance will crash and burn like Maddie and Dave's on Moonlighting. I love that reference. But it was really fun to read this book. Classic panel layouts, kind of, drawn in almost like that Bronze Age style that you and I grew up with. And it was nice mystery. I didn't realize the color blindness, but when they said it, I was like, oh, of course. That's why they kept saying things about red and green. And, you thought it had to do with the holidays because of holiday colors.
Oh, yeah. Hiding in plain sight, essentially,
mm-hmm,
right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I pulled up the cover of the issue, George, on comics.org, just so I had a reference for what we were talking about. And it's so nice to see Alan Davis's work.
It is,
especially in something that I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And it's just with, like you said, you described the cherubs and then the ominous threat that is happening with the guys that are pointing guns at them. And the whole manger thing. It's like, this is a weird mishmash, but it looks really cool.
It does. They're in the diner. The diner windows all have snow in each pane. In the bottom right of each pane. It's a really nice layout.
Yeah. Oh, I have to get this series. But you said Kamiko and then ends at 7. This starts at 8.
Oh, is that the proper pronunciation?
I don't know.
Kamiko?
I've heard Kamiko. I've heard Kamiko.
Here I say Comico.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I'm wrong. But the Innovation had it until issue 23.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where it went then. Was it Caliber after that?
I'm not sure. I think I was mixing up because I wasn't looking at my notes. and it began with a C. So I probably said Caliber. It really wasn't Caliber. Although I do remember IDW had it. They put out a compilation, and there was a compilation that Innovation put out, and I think it was of the first 4 issues that might have been from Comico, Comico, whatever. I wouldn't mind getting that trade collection because back then they didn't really do things like that.
Yes.
So something like that is probably pretty rare.
Yeah. I'm definitely intrigued, and I got to go see if I can find a collection somewhere, or at least the issues. I know I did, like I said before, I did look for them, and where I normally buy back issues online, they didn't have that many. Like they had 2 or 3 of them, and I'm like, I'll just wait until I talk to George and see if it's something I really want to get. So,
I guess I should have put a spoiler warning at the beginning. Might have to go back and edit it in. That basically, since I said all mine are mysteries, maybe proceed with caution because I'm going to give away. I'm going to give away the what happens.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, my first choice here is one of the short stories that I chose, and but it is from a book called Blue Monday or Blue Mondays. Wait a minute, let me check my notes. Yeah, so it's a book that is called Blue Monday by China Clugston Flores. But most of the references I had on this, and I think, in fact, the cover credits just include China Clugston as the author. But Blue Monday is a book that I'd never heard of. This is all part of the infamous digital collections that I get from Humble Bundle occasionally, and I think this came from one of the image bundles that I have, and so. I just happened to discover. I searched my collection for more Christmas stuff, looking for something different, and I found this short story. It's part of a collection. It's the 3rd collection of Blue Monday, and this one is called the collection's called In Between Days. Like I said, the 3rd collection of Blue Monday, but it is all holiday-themed one-shots, plus this short story involving Christmas of these characters. So, let me give you a little background. And George, I'll show you on the if oh man, you cannot see that, can you? Skype is not our friend.
No, it comes in and out.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I'll have these covers in the post for when this is released. But let's see here. So I don't know. Are you familiar with Blue Monday?
I've seen the title before. Could the print versions of these have been solicited in previews at some time?
Very possible. Let's see. This was so this particular version of it came from Image Comics, but it was originally published. Well, originally it was a webcomic. I think self-published by Clugston. But then Oni Press in 2000 picked it up and released 15 black and white issues that they collected in digest-sized paperbacks. And then in 2015, Image Comics acquired the rights for printing, and then they did they released the collected trades, of which I have the digital versions. Or at least some of them anyway. I have this one at least. And those were colored by Jordi Belair.
Oh, nice. I've never read any of these, by the way.
Okay. So this is about a group of high school friends based in California. Blue Finnegan, she has blue hair, is basically the main character of it. And then everything kind of revolves around her. Clover Connolly, who is from Ireland. She's an exchange student, or maybe not exchange. Her parents are working in the United States. And so she becomes good friends with Blue. Part of the remainder of the group here, Alan Walsh, is a young man who secretly likes Blue. Victor Gomez likes Clover. And Erin O'Neill is the other female of the character, and she likes Alan. So you get a bunch of that high school back and forth romance triangle stuff all around.
Some Archie comics going on there or something.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, George.
Really? Okay.
Yes, because Clugston describes the series as, quote, Archie on crack with cursing and smokes.
Yes, the Archie we've always wanted.
Yeah, I thought you would in particularly, or you in particular would like this story.
Listen, if Archie the company is not going to bring back Pep and Archie's pals and gals and Madhouse or whatever, this is the Archie we need.
Yeah, well, and it does. It reads exactly like a hard-edged, more realistic Archie and gang. So, this particular story, Bluebells is the name of it. It as even more so, George. Interestingly, it is a crossover with Paul Dini's Jingle Bell. If you're familiar with that character.
Oh yes, Jingle Bell. I'm surprised. You know what? I think it's almost like too obvious for us to do a Jingle Bell, but we've never done Jingle Bell.
I know, right?
On this thing that we do every year.
I don't have any comics that feature that character until this one. So I'm have to. I've looked at it before in years past, thinking, oh, this might, because they every once in a while Denny releases a Jingle Bell special, and so I've often thought about getting those just to add to the repertoire, as it were.
Right.
But so this is my first real encounter with Jingle Bell. Besides,
oh no! Even before we finished this episode, did we just play in next year's already? I don't know what we're doing here, folks. So much can happen in 365 days.
That's right. Anyway, so this came out. This story came out in 2008. So it starts off with Jingle Bell arriving in the same town as our Blue Monday gang after having stolen her dad's sleigh. So you already get a sense of what Jingle Bell is about. She's all about rebelling and anarchy, and then some other things as we get into this. When she hears the gang arriving at the cemetery, which is where she's landed, she hides in a tree because she's not sure, what's going on. Who is that kind of stuff. Anyway, Alan and Victor arrive first, and then Blue, Clover, Aaron, and Aaron's cousin Paul, who is not one of the main set of characters from what I could tell of this book, of this series. They arrive. Because they plan to have a little Christmas Eve party together and exchange gifts. Oh, sounds very nice, right? Friends getting together, celebrating the holiday in a cemetery, as you do when you're in high school. Not me, man, because that's too freaking cold to be out on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I can't say I ever did that.
Maybe, I did this. I did something similar in my youth, like during Halloween, but never Christmas time. So anyway, let's see here. Paul impresses the others by having brought and this is where it gets absurd. This is where it gets into the whole.
Oh, this is where it gets absurd.
Yes, this is where it starts.
Stole her father's sleigh.
You have to accept certain,
certain
concepts.
I mean, come on, let's face it. He's real. He's real, folks. Let's put it out.
But this is where it gets, like I said, kind of comic book absurd, because he brought a roasted pig and French bread to share, because everybody else is like, I think I have a sucker and maybe I have a candy bar, But he impresses them by actually bringing a meal. So
is he a cook? Did you say he's a chef?
No,
no.
Okay. I mean, maybe it wasn't spelled out in the issue, in the story, but. It was just, here's this new character for me, especially, and everybody's like, "Who the hell are you?" And then he instantly gets good karma out of it by providing this actual food. But then they start exchanging gifts. Clover gets, again, here we go, George, edible underwear, and that's
on my list. No, just kidding. Santa,
I forget which boy it was that gave her that, but he was volunteering to help her out with that. So it starts to get a little crude, right? Clover gives Victor a good luck charm necklace. But he questions what is this? And she says it's a good luck charm, you dummy, and then punches him, and then Just the little tiny, a little. It kind of reminds me of manga style, because you got a little wide-eyed Victor off to the side of the panel. It's even actually outside of the panel, and it's just this little wide-eyed head of him, and he's saying so much for it being a good luck charm. Paul gets a bucket of fun from Blue, which includes a disc gun. So you remember those old guns where it had the little disc and you pulled the trigger and it would wind it up and it'd go flying off?
Yeah.
Did you ever play with those? Yeah. So Paul's very easily amused, I think is what Blue says. Aaron gets soap from one of the boys, I'm sure.
Okay.
Probably the lamest present on this. And then Blue also gets some kind of junky presents, but then she also gets a 45 record she's been wanting for years. Because she's real. So part of the thing about Blue Monday and this group of friends is that, especially Blue and Clover, based on what I have read a little bit more besides this this Christmas story, they're all about the music, and especially Blue was Blue and Clover are really into punk, and not your typical top 40 radio music, right? And so she gets this record, and she loves it, and let's see, who did I? Oh, this is from Alan. And Victor's like, dude, what? That's not what we talked about getting her. What are you doing? And it's just because Alan likes her. So I thought that was cute. Aaron gives Alan a picture of Aaron in lingerie. She is not shy. This girl. I discovered in reading these stories. Anyway, Paul then starts to shoot Victor with the disc gun. Victor throws the gun up into the tree, and this, as Paul climbs the tree to retrieve it, that's when they encounter Jingle Bell. And so she jumps down from the tree, and all three boys are like, the big googly eyes, right? Because it's a pretty girl that's suddenly there. So, like I said, this is not normally something that I would enjoy, but I really like the humor of it, despite the fact that it was just kind of real, high school locker room type humor. But anyway, she does introduce herself as Santa's daughter, Jingle Bell, and they share some eggnog that somebody else brought, but she adds a bit of the alcohol to it to make it, a little more interesting. And so they're drinking. Everybody's drinking. And so after some drinks, the boys finally ask her name and think that Jingle Bell is a stripper name. Jingle Bell, of course, protests, saying she's better than a stripper. The boys then goad her on until she starts dancing and eventually removes her shirt.
Wait, though. So when she removes her shirt, does this now not go from innuendo and a little raunch to being not truly family friendly?
You don't see. Well, you see her from the backside, but it's clear that she is nude. She doesn't have anything on underneath that shirt, right?
Right.
So yeah, this is not your you don't share this with your 10 years old or younger people in your family.
Right. Our buddy Sergeant America could not read this one with his daughter.
No. Or
Private Peanut cannot read this.
Yeah, or Damien's daughter for that matter.
Oh yeah, Damien's daughter shouldn't read this either. That's right. Although she's older than Private Peanut.
I mean, Maddie, my daughter Maddie just turned 19 just a couple days ago as of this recording, and I don't want her to read this.
Right.
So. Anyway.
Yeah, this is definitely adult themes, mature themes.
Which now I'm suddenly questioning my choice, George. What am I doing?
We're old enough. We may be immature, but we're old enough technically to be reading this.
Well, and all of my choices have a bit of a dark theme to them.
Okay, so minor mysteries, and
Yeah,
yours are a little dark.
a
Okay.
little dark. So
But listen, themes. That's, we each have themes.
that's right. That's right. Anyway, so yeah, she's just dancing around there doing a little stripper dance, I guess.
Again, what is the name of this and what page is this? Oh, sorry. We'll talk later.
But anyway, Santa arrives. He's very irate.
Sure.
Not only did she take his sleigh,
Mhm.
but then the way she's acting. So she questions, "How did you find me?" And then he says something along the lines of, "After the last incident, he put a tracker in her boots."
Mm. He's freaking Santa. He sees you when you're sleeping.
I know.
He knows
It's
when
like,
you're awake.
I don't think he
He
needs
knows when
a
you
tracker.
take your top off.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's right. Anyway, they both leave, and we are told through a caption box that the Blue Monday gang receive expensive gifts for years in exchange for their silence.
Mm.
So that's what happened, but they're kind of like I described Victor in that little tiny drawing off to the side. There's a lot of cool things like that Clugston puts in the work here.
Huh.
Erin makes a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving reference because she mentions, somebody bringing toast and what did somebody bring toast and jelly beans?
Right.
I already talked about the charm where Clover slaps him. Jingle Bell, when Clover starts to question the fact that Jingle Bell is an elf, Jingle Bell's like, "Got a problem, Irish?" And Clover says, "Want to dance, Nanook?" I mean, it's not politically correct, but it's funny. Like I said, music plays a big part of their lives. And during Jingle Bell's dance, we hear a song playing, and it's by Lords of Acid. The Most Wonderful Girl is the name of the song. And we know this because Clugston put a little bit of text below that area to let you know this is the soundtrack of this moment. So I thought that was really cool. One page has. Okay, I'm going to give you a range here, George, between 1 and 40.
Okay.
How many panels did Clugston put on one page here?
Are you allowed to tell me? Am I allowed to ask what part of the story this is? Like what was happening, or not? Would that give it away?
I don't.
That'd give it away.
I don't remember actually.
Okay. All right.
I'd have to look it up.
So 40 is a pretty specific number, and I'm going to err on the side of a high number, but I don't think it was 40. So I'm not even going to go right up the middle. I'm going to go a little more than the middle and say 27.
Really close. It was 19.
Okay. Nice.
Anyway, the reason I bring this up is, 19 panels is a lot on a comic book page,
it is,
right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But what I liked about it was that Clugston herself lets us know her effort of providing 19 panels of art by calling it out in the gutters.
Oh, no way.
It's the author's commentary among this story. I love it. In fact, I think the exact quote is "more panels than you can shake a stick at."
Mm-hmm. This sounds right up my alley, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm kind of, a little deranged, more than deranged than all of you may think I am if you listen to me while at the podcast. But this does sound right up my alley.
Yeah.
Blue Monday in total sounds right up my alley.
I can't wait. Now I'm going to go back and start from the beginning. I'm sure I have volume 1 and 2 as well as part of this Humble bundle that I purchased.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back and start reading these from the beginning.
I think in my mind I'm seeing the logo, the Blue Monday logo. There's the same logo on everything, right?
I assume
there's
so.
a logo, right?
Yeah.
I think in my head I'm thinking of the logo, and now I'm going to have to seek this out because this does sound like it's made for me.
And then at the very end of this, as after Santa Claus and Jingle Bell have left, and I already told you they get some presents for years after that. At the very bottom, Clugston has put, "Dudes are dogs and full of eggnog. Sleep tight, sugar plums." But wait, George, there's more.
There's more.
There is a coda to this. and it is set right after the events of this particular encounter with Jingle Bell. This is on Boxing Day, December 26th, and it's just a 1-page gag. So it's just like a freaking Archie comic. The gang have gone to the Fashion Fair Mall where they're exchanging, gifts for the gifts they got for other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's see here. Victor? Oh yeah, Victor says that I got that picture Jingle Bell gave me framed up, and then Alan's like, "What? When did she give you a picture?" And it was in his stocking the day before. And okay, I'm going to be crude here. Fair warning, everybody. I'm just quoting. Victor says, I'm going to put it right next to my bed so that I have hot, sex-filled dreams every night. Guaranteed. To which Alan says, that's a smart move. The picture will last longer without pools of spoo gumming it up.
Oh, God.
Right? Anyway, at this point...
Put a warning at the beginning of this show.
They're just words. They're just words, George. Anyway, we see Clover bending down, and she's doing something with something with a package in her hand. And Blue asks her, "What'd you get?" And Clover says, "Something that fits my mood and the occasion." And Alan says, "What is it?" Again, apologies. I'm a raging bitch because I didn't get the presents I wanted day. and Clover stands up, and she's got some boxing gloves on. She says, "Not quite." And then the next panel that we see are both Victor and Alan on the floor of the mall, their faces bloodied, and the picture of Jingle Bell has been broken and it's on the floor. And Alan says, "Should have seen that coming. It's..." Victor, of course, finishes the sentence, "Boxing Day."
Mm-hmm.
I love this.
Is she the one who got the soap?
No, that was Aaron.
Oh, okay.
I forget now what Clover got, but anyway,
wow, that is good.
This is 5 pages,
including that last 1-page gag.
Yeah, so that whole Jingle Bell situation, 4 pages.
Wow.
Now, granted, like I said, 1 page has 19 panels.
19, sure. Mm-hmm.
but I mean, there are all just about all the pages. Yeah, all the pages have. We're talking at least 12 panels per page.
Mm-hmm.
So she is fitting a lot, but it doesn't feel cramped or crowded. And I don't know. There's enough going on in the panels, even though you really can't show a whole lot because the panels are pretty small. I never felt cheated or anything or lost or anything. I'm impressed with Clugson's ability to tell a story in the way that she's decided to do so. This is not your typical Marvel DC layout.
No.
So I highly recommend this. If you can get past some of the crude behavior and things that they say.
But we're all adults, so that's okay. Do you know if this is still an ongoing thing today as a webcomic?
I don't know about the webcomic. I do know that there was supposedly more stuff coming through Image, and I think of the latest volume, I'll say, if I remember correctly, 1 issue was printed, and then we've not seen anything since.
Oh, okay. One of those type things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But like I said, well worth your time if you're looking for a bit of raunchy humor, high school humor type stuff.
Yeah. Everybody can use a little bit of that. Again, only 5 pages.
Yeah. Right. Quick and easy, fun Christmas time story.
Love it.
So what do you got next?
Eric, I told you that I had been going to a dollar bin in the fall when I went to this small convention here in the Northern Virginia area. And I was finding things. They were unbagged comics. They were in no particular order. I know a lot of people say if they're not in alphabetical order, I don't want to thumb through them. But it was just fun, especially since they weren't bagged and boarded. I was just having fun grabbing random things. And when I saw anything that had to do with the holidays, of course, my eyes lit up. And I was thinking ahead to this. I'm like, oh man, this would be fantastic, which is where the Maze Agency came from. Kind of novel for me to read that book. And then I picked up this book because it had you written all over it. And I said, well, I don't think
Well, I'm
we've
sorry
talked
about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand why people were writing Eric from Longbox Review all over the front cover. I don't even think they know you. It must have been a timey-wimey thing. That part I didn't understand. This is a book that I would never have picked up when it would first hit the stands. But then again, considering my age, no, I was still collecting comics at the time. This wasn't the break that we all talk about as comic collectors when we all take a break. This is The Adventures of Superboy. I had to make sure that we did not do this one on the show. It's not just The Adventures of Superboy, though, because as you know, in a little blurb at the top, it says, as seen on TV. So it's based on the TV show, which I never watched. Did you watch The Adventures of Superboy?
I vaguely recall
Mm-hmm.
seeing an episode or two, but I couldn't really tell you anything about it other than I was not impressed. But
well, considering it was late 80s, early 90s, I guess, based on the date of this book anyway.
Yeah, I was aware of this comic book as well, being out on the stands about that time. So
this comic has a January 1991 issue date, and it was $1. Now, when you think about it, it had to be an as seen on TV thing because it's post-crisis. There's no Superboy. So it has to be out of what would be considered continuity at the time. So this is strictly the TV show, which I wonder if it was weird for somebody to see this on the stand who hadn't seen the show and say, Superboy, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Didn't they get rid of him in a couple of years ago or something like that?
Or they thought, oh, they're bringing him back.
Well, here we have the cover. This is issue number 12 of The Adventures of Superboy. Right underneath the logo, it says Christmas Wishes. And you see Superboy standing in the street, a snow-laden street, snow's falling from the sky, and townspeople are flying. They're floating in the air or flying like he would be doing. And he has a look on his face like, ugh. And I want you to picture this because this cover, I confirmed it, it looked like it was drawn by Kevin Maguire, and it was.
Okay.
So picture somebody making an ew face drawn by Kevin Maguire. He does that pretty good. He's done that on the cover of the Justice League books, right?
Yes.
It is kind of funny though. This cover will be in the show picture, but some of the, like, there's a picture of an old couple, and I don't know if that's supposed to represent Mom, Pa, Ken, but it's almost as if somebody just cut them out and pasted them because they're just like as if they were standing, but they're floating, while everybody else is actually in a position where it looks like they're flying. They're purposely flying. They just look like somebody just copied and pasted them on the page. It's very weird. And the little girl who's flying at the top of the picture, right underneath the logo, the way she looks in relation to the size of the other people and her positioning makes her look like she's a Macy's Thanksgiving Day balloon. So everybody, when you see, everybody could look this up if they're going to do the whole hashtag live tweet thing or do this in real time, but we'll have this picture in the show notes so everybody could see. And one other thing that I'd like people to compare, there is a character in the lower left of the cover that to me looks like Randy Quaid. I know that's just a coincidence, but I looked at his face and I'm like, who is that? Oh my God, that's Randy Quaid.
I don't know that necessarily that's a coincidence though.
You never know.
If McQuire's doing it, maybe he decided to throw him in there.
Let me get you to the credits here in the book. So, and by the way, I know you and I like to talk about things like the ads and stuff like that. Basically, Eric, early 90s, they're only video game ads. Really nothing to speak of. The story is called Holidazed and Confused, written by John Moore, art by Kurt Swan, believe it or not. Inked by Ty Templeton, lettered by Robert de Guzman. The colorist is Nancy Houlihan. The associate editor is John Peterson, and the editor is Mike Carlin. Now, one thing I've got to say here, I think you and some other people on your show, I guess a lot of other people who talk Superman, may have debated their love or disdain for Kurt Swan. Where do you land on Kurt Swan's Superman?
Well, I think Kurt Swan is a master illustrator. I may not always like his Superman. He looks more like a barrel-chested weekend warrior type person. But Kurt Swan is a master, especially facial features. The guy is an amazing artist. But yeah, he's not my favorite Superman artist. That's for sure.
I think when I was reading Superman comics, he was pretty much my Superman artist because I guess that's what I grew up with, right?
Yeah, same.
I think, yeah. But in looking at this and having a more, not educated eye, but a more, I've read enough that I can see certain things. There are pictures where, say, Ma Kent is with a friend. We'll get to talking about it, but their faces and their profile, like their 3/4 view of their face, it's exactly the same, but it's as if you had the same actress. She had a wig on because she was portraying Ma Kent, and then she quickly had to get another wig to portray the friend, and the shot is the same, and also the angle of Clark's face. You could look at one panel, and then you could look at another panel on another page, and it's basically the same. And you know what? Now I know I'm critiquing that, but I'll bet you could probably say the same for a lot of artists. So I don't know if that's fair that he gets, he gets a dig on that, because I bet you we could say the same thing about John Byrne.
Oh yeah.
Or
yeah, the sameness that the repetitive
every artist does
ticks that they have. Yeah.
Our favorite artists do that. That's just the way they draw. It's just funny to see it here on the page here on a comic that's 30, 35 years old. So anyway, let's get into it. Oh, and one other thing about him, and this might be something that could be said not only of him, but maybe artists of the era, and actually maybe even artists today. For the majority of this book, Clark does not look like he's a late teen. He looks like Clark Kent Superman.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with Swan too, is that his Superman tends to look exactly the same no matter what he's doing.
There is a part at the end where Clark is opening a gift where he looks younger, remarkably younger than he had throughout the entire book. You forget he's Superboy when you see him throughout the book, except when he's in costume. When he's Clark, he's Clark. He may as well be Superman. But again, that's just critical, and I don't even know if that's fair to say it's only him. Probably a lot of artists do that. No,
yeah, that's been one of my pet peeves being a Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes fan, is that not many people draw Superboy as a teenager. They draw him as a young adult at the the best. Or he just looks like a slightly smaller version of his adult self.
What I may do on our social media when this episode comes out, I might get a few panels as an example, and especially compare them to the one that I think at the end of the book where he does look younger, and see what everybody else thinks. But anyway, here we are, The Adventures of Superboy, issue number 12. January 1991 issue for $1, and this is what $1 got you. Oh, and by the way, on the cover where it says Christmas wishes, basically it seems like everybody's wishes they want to fly because they're all flying. But here we go. You get an official feeling of suspense on the splash page, and again, a splash page. We don't get many splash pages these days in comics. You get this feeling of suspense in the bird's eye view of Clark Kent in a barn, flying up to the hayloft carrying a tractor. Someone enters, and Clark thinks to himself, no, not him, not now. Or maybe I'm reading that wrong, but that's how I'm reading in my head. No, not him, not now. Initially, the reader is led to believe Clark's secret identity as Superboy is at risk of being exposed because when the person walks in, they look like they could be a little gruff. You're getting a bird's eye view, so you're only seeing the top of their head. They have a baseball cap on. They look like they're built a little bit, and it looks like the person just, throwing the door open and yelling, Clark? But it turns out to be Pa Kent.
Yeah. Okay. That's who I was guessing it was going to be.
Yeah. And Clark wasn't worried about his secret identity being exposed. He was only worried that Pa would see the old tractor that Clark had fixed, and he wants to save it as a surprise for Christmas morning. Mm-hmm. Crisis averted, Eric. See what I did there? Crisis averted?
Yep.
See what I did? Mm-hmm. Okay, anyway.
And mystery solved. Good job, George.
Yeah. Pa says Ma Kent wants Clark to take her to her friend Lila's place. There's a reference to Lila and Pa not getting along. That seems like it could be a plot point, like something that's been carrying over. I don't know. Maybe it's in the TV show. Maybe Lila's like a Gladys Kravitz or something, like the Mrs. Kravitz of the show. I really don't know.
Wait. You might have to explain who that character is, just to give some context.
That's not fair. People may just be tuning in because all they know are holiday things, and they don't know I'm referencing Bewitched. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Kravitz was the nosy neighbor who always put Samantha's witchdom at risk. So Samantha always had to hide her magic whenever she would do anything. And because Mrs. Kravitz was always nosy, Samantha always thought she wasn't being observed when maybe she, twinkled her nose, and all of a sudden ice cream sundaes appeared for everybody, and Mrs. Kravitz was watching from the window. So Samantha always had to worry about stuff like that. The Lila Pa Kent rift, whatever caused that rift, is never mentioned, really. It just seems like it's there. So again, I don't know if she's a character on the TV show, and this is just to carry it over into the book. Lila's two grandchildren are running around outside. Her nickname for them is Sugar and Spike.
Ah, nice.
Mm-hmm. Lila lives in a trailer park, and the kids trample over the garden in front of crazy old Mr. Mondragons. As he yells at the kids for trampling his garden, he collapses. Clark, Ma Kent, and Lila bring him into his trailer. As Lila dials 911, Clark notices Mr. Mondragon's collection of ceremonial masks, religious icons, and Indian tapestries. Mondragon wakes up and is furious that there are uninvited guests, and he unappreciatively kicks them out before Lila can complete the call for the ambulance. They reluctantly leave, and Mondragon still doesn't feel well, and he lays back down. He turns on the TV, and there is a news story about Superboy. In his feverish state, he absentmindedly grabs an amulet from his collection, holds it to his chest, and mutters, Superboy, Superboy, as he passes out. And as he passes out, the amulet glows. Dunk, dunk, dunk.
Yeah.
By the way, I will say one thing about the structure of this story. The page turns are great. Voices coming in from off panel. I believe the next book we talk about is laid out that way too. So again, classic Bronze Age-ish storytelling. And I guess this is what made me fall in love with comics, the pacing of stories like this, especially these one and dones. Just the way they're paced, and the end of one page, you need the page turn. I mean, it's nothing spectacular, but it is enough to make you want to turn the page, and then the payoff is fun. Later, in downtown Smallville, Clark and Lana Lang are walking down the hustling and bustling streets. They stop in front of a statue of a person named Rutherford B. Small, who looks a little bit like Abraham Lincoln. They reminisce about climbing on the statue when they were little kids. The two comment on the air temperature getting warmer when someone off panel asks, "What in Sam Hill's name's been done to this town?" This is one of those page turns I was talking about. That someone is the statue of Rutherford B. Small come to life. He asks, "What in tarnation is a 7-Eleven?" among other comments, as he's talking to Clark and Lana. One of the things he says is, "This town always was a nuisance." So you could tell that maybe Rutherford B. Small, maybe he's a hero of the town, but really didn't hold it in high regard. Everyone is mesmerized by the animated statue, including a guy driving down the street in a van, barreling toward a kid with a balloon running in the street. Only Lana notices this, and she runs out to grab the kid. Unfortunately, she and the kid get hit by the van. Or rather, Lana hits the van because the front of the van crumples around Lana as if it would around Superman or Superboy.
Mm-hmm.
Clark comments, "First the small statue, and now you. Maybe I should call Professor Peterson." And in my head is like, who the hell is Professor Peterson? But probably somebody from the show, a supporting character in the book. No, you don't remember any Professor Peterson from like Superboy and the Legion or anything like that, right? Okay.
There was a professor, but I think I'm thinking of when Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Hamilton, that's who I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, never mind.
All right. Well, a supporting character, probably somebody from the show. Who knows?
Yeah.
In the commotion, the kid had let go of his balloon, and he flies up to get it and effortlessly lands. In the hours that follow, everyone in Smallville can fly, bend steel, cook food with their eyes. And Clark wonders if he's radiating super ions, but that wouldn't explain the animatronic curmudgeon statue. So again, he's got his own comic logic about why is this happening? Is it me? Everybody seems to have my powers. Is it me? But then that doesn't explain the statue. Why did the statue come to life? Oh, and while the statue came to life, he's still stuck on his pedestal. So he's stuck up. He's not walking around town.
Ah, okay.
He's stuck up there.
No wonder he's cranky.
Yeah. He is able to take off his coat and his hat, though, but he can't get off the pedestal. You see him in some random montage pictures as Clark is wondering all this stuff, and you see him shooing birds away from him, which I thought was a funny little touch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a page where Clark and Lana fly around together, and Clark monologues his inner monologue with a thought balloon, which, again, we don't see very often. Not a caption box, but an actual bubble thought balloon. This has got to be the weirdest Christmas break ever. At home, Pa Kent ripped the family Christmas tree right out of the ground with his bare hands, and he's decorating it with super speed. Ma Kent is taking a pan out of the oven barehanded. So everybody in Smallville has got these superpowers. Clark monologues again. "I feel like the Grinch, thinking there's something definitely wrong here, and there's something worse to come. Clark, you think?"
George, this sounds like I feel like I've read this story before, and I know I haven't. I have not read this issue, but this sounds very familiar. Where people get Superboy's powers, and he has to deal with. I feel like I've read that story somehow already.
Do you think in that story he was emitting superpowered ions from his body?
I'm sure. If Jim Shooter wrote this as a Superboy in the Legion story, I'm sure he probably would have come up with something very similar.
Oh God! All right, let me turn the page. Hold on. I'll edit out the page thing because I wrote it and I didn't type. Okay, here we go. The scene shifts to Mondragon's trailer. Surprise, surprise, right? It had to be Mondragon, which is glowing intensely from the amulet on his chest as he lies unconscious. There's a commercial on the TV for a junkyard selling scrap metal. After the commercial's over, we return to the movie classic, Mutant Sauruses from Mars.
Oh, no.
Shift to the actual junkyard from the commercial, where the proprietor is sitting on his porch, bending steel with his newfound powers. With his bare hands, he's bending steel. And he's watching the same movie. He's suddenly attacked by a creature made out of his scrap metal that resembles the mythical Mutansaurus from the movie. He flies to battle it, but he's swiftly subdued. At the same time in town, that's a direct quote from the caption. Love the omniscient narrator. I wish I could do my Ted Knight. At the same time in town, people start falling from the sky. See, this is why we have I don't know, folks, if you're listening to this on the Lone Box Review feed or on the Meanwhile the Podcast feed, but on Meanwhile the Podcast, we have a show announcer named Adam Sharrock, and it is his baritone. Like he says, meanwhile at the podcast in his best, Ted Knight. It's actually, he's not trying to be Ted Knight, but, he's trying to, meanwhile at the podcast. So that's what Adam does at the beginning of every episode of Meanwhile at the Podcast. At the same time in town, people start falling from the sky as they lose their powers. Now, it doesn't seem like anybody's really getting seriously hurt, or at least we're not seeing anybody seriously getting hurt. I have read comics where people lose their superpowers, even Superman, but he's like stories high, like 10 stories high, and just falls from the sky and gets hurt. So here, people, I guess, were just hovering about a story above the ground.
That would still hurt, though. It would break me, that's for sure.
Those that seem to have been a little higher seem to land in a soft spot. There happens to be a hay bale, or of course, right,
pile of snow or something, yeah,
or caught by somebody on the ground. As one girl falls from the sky with a bundle of gifts in her hand, remember it is Christmas time, her mother exclaims, "Don't let your grandma's present fall. It's Waterford." If anybody doesn't know, Waterford crystal. So what's more important, your daughter falling or the crystal breaking? Mm-hmm. It's a toss-up. I don't know.
Yeah, kids bounce back.
Yeah, there you go. Could always have more. Anyway, the junkyard monster attacks the busy Smallville street. Clark flies in, and, I guess Clark you're supposed to believe he's unaware that everybody lost their powers and they've plummeted from the sky, because I guess if he knew they were plummeting from the sky, he might help them. Lana tells him since he still has his superpowers, he has to do something about this monster that's attacking the town. Before Clark can act, the monstrosity knocks the animated Rutherford Small statue from his pedestal. Remember I told you he was on his pedestal? And the statue says, "Never like this town. Never." Clark is ineffective against the creature, and he figures that magic has to be involved. You think, Clark? You think? While he's airborne, he notices Mondragon's trailer is glowing in the distance. By the way, just to throw this out there, while Clark was briefly battling that monstrosity, a couple of his shirt buttons came undone, and you could see the Superman costume, the Superboy costume underneath. That may come into play a little bit later. Clark flies over to Mondragon's trailer and sees him laying there with the amulet glowing on his chest. Clark tries to wake him up, and he does, and Mondragon is shocked. He goes, "Oh no, the amulet. All my dreams. Please, you have to tell me what happened in town. Tell me right now." So Clark explains it very briefly, and Mondragon says that the amulet was given to him by some kind of shaman type person as payment for a favor he had done him. And he even says, "I should have kept this out of harm's way," which kind of lets you know that there was no malicious intent on Mondragon's part. Although he does say, "We will go into town, but first I need a cup of coffee. I'm no good without a cup of Java to start my day." So it's okay that I'm going to handle this, but I need a cup of Joe. They get into town, and of course, Mondragon is able to stop the monstrosity with his amulet. Now, here's the fun part, or to tie up all the loose ends in a page or two in a one issue story. Mondragon explains how things work with the amulet, how he thinks of something can come to life. So, for instance, he creates a snow wraith out of the snow, and then he just destroys it and just becomes snowflakes as it goes thump on the ground, trying to show what the amulet does. And he says, I mean no ill will, but this is what it does, and I'm going to pack it away. Nobody should have this amulet. Lana notices Clark's shirt open and the Superboy logo, and she goes, everything's starting to make sense now. And just as she says that, Mondragon extends his arm and says, now she won't remember. This other life seems to be important to you. Nobody will remember. And then Clark tries to protest, and he goes, Mondragon goes, I'll return everything to normal. I'm just an old man trying to live a quiet life. Go to sleep. And then Clark passes out. He wakes up Christmas morning in his bed, uses his X-ray vision to check on the town, and sees that everything seems to be back to normal. And nobody seems to remember what happened. He's talking to Mom and Pa Kent, and they think he just had a wild dream when he asks, do you remember you doing this, you doing that? And they're sitting by the tree, and this is the part where Clark looks a lot younger than he did throughout the rest of the story. And he's opening a gift that nobody knows where the gift came from. And it's a snow globe. And within the snow globe is the monstrosity that had been attacking Smallville. As Clark opens the gift, he said, who's this one from? There's no card. And then somebody, I guess it's Ma Parkent, says, what is it, son? And he says, it's the stuff that dreams are made of, I guess. The end.
Well, that was not going where I thought it was going to go initially.
Well, where'd you think it was going to go?
Well, I figured that everything would go back to normal once that character woke up from whatever weird situation he was in, as opposed to he came to and then fixed it consciously.
Right.
I'm surprised they didn't try to tie like he had something to do with Santa Claus or something like that.
I know, right? And stories like this, these are the types of things that you think people like Mark Waid, Tom King, trying to think of people today who dig very deep. Ryan North with what he's doing with Fantastic Four. This is the type of story that you'd think one of these people would just grab this little tidbit and just bring it back. Like, does Mondragon ever appear again? He has no intention of malice, but maybe somebody gets his amulet or one of his other icons and uses it, and then he's got to battle them, help Superman battle them because it's magic or something like that. This is the type of thing that I could see somebody grabbing from 30, 40 years ago and throwing it into a story that would all of a sudden be an event. That would be a big event.
An event, yeah.
I know you and I like to look at the ads, and again, I said the ads were really just video games, but the letters. Do you mind if I paraphrase a few letters here?
See, that's the one thing I missed about my Christmas Gab Bag reading was because they are in trade collections, 2 of them anyway. I don't get that kind of stuff, at least in the collections I have. So, yeah, please let's hear it.
And I want you to put yourself in your shoes back when you were reading Superboy and the Legion. When you hear this portion of the letter I'm going to read. You did it again. Superboy the comic number 7 was another example of genius at work. I like the idea of doing a comic book with the younger reader in mind. When I took my nephew to the comic book store for the first time to treat him to a comic, I knew exactly which one I could count on, Superboy. I knew I would not have to worry about polluting his mind with excessive violence, blood, and despair. Superboy is a comic that offers characters who have self-esteem and show compassion to those in need. Superboy isn't a comic of mindless drivel, but one that examines issues that are important to young people, like acceptance of self and belonging to a group. My nephew loved the book. And then the letter goes on, but then in the response, the editor says, wow, thanks for the great testimonial. The entire Superboy team has, from the beginning, tried to make this comic a little bit different from your standard comic book of today. And it's good to hear that we're hitting the mark with so many of you. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some people who, I guess maybe they were young, didn't read Crisis, didn't understand the whole reboot, because again, the reboot had happened, 5-6 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
So people in this letter column were asking for, hey, when's Batman going to show up,
Yeah.
or some other superhero. So one of the other responses was, since this book is not set in the DC universe, very few, if any, of the DC universe characters exist in this particular Superboy universe. Besides, we feel that a lot of DC Universe guest stars would confuse the issue. Let's just stick to the universe for a while. So they're not coming right out and saying, you can't say in like 2 sentences what happened, but trying to let these people know, look, we know you're asking for Batman, you're asking for Wonder Woman, you're asking for adult Superman. It's not going to happen, kids. They're just trying to let people know that. Another response, this seems almost like an exasperated response. Okay, here we go again. The Superboy in these stories is still a young man in college. He will eventually grow up to be Superman, quite possibly the one in the movies. Now, the Superman in the DC universe never had a career as Superboy, although he had most of his full powers by the time he was a teenager. As established in Man of Steel #1, Superman didn't make his first appearance as Superman until his mid-20s. Okay, there will be a pop quiz on this next issue, so study up. So they're really trying to lay the law down to the people who read this, that this is not Superman. And now kids probably reading this going, well, wait a minute. I've read Superboy comics before where he becomes Superman, and I guess it does get confusing if you weren't our age, if you were only like 10 years old, and you didn't get this whole concept of the universe ended and all this stuff. I can see how it would have been confusing to a kid who just wanted to see team up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And the story that you just recounted of the issue, actually reminds me a lot of the Smallville television series.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a Monster of the Week type situation. It's not, it wasn't. I mean, there were creatures that were conjured up that Superboy had to deal with, but yeah, it was they could have easily taken that same plot and tweaked it a little bit, and it could have been a Smallville episode. In fact, it probably was a Smallville episode, whether it was intentional or not.
2 things I think are of note in today's world. Issue 7 apparently was written by Mark Waid. And it was a story about how good people could be pushed to do bad things. Looks like it was a story about mental health. So 35 years ago, Mark Waid, writing an Adventures of Superboy comic, talking about mental health. Now get this next issue blurb, though. Bigfoot vows to kill any and all humans he sees. Read the untold story. Man loses 250 pounds overnight by eating all he wants. Read the untold story. Superboy's powers are killing him. Read Untold Stories in Superboy #13. It's written by Tom Peyer, penciled by Paris Collins, and inked by Ty Templeton. And it'll be on sale in just 28 days. Oh, yeah. We should probably also tell you that all these weird distortions of reality come to Capital City courtesy of one mischievous little imp from 4 or 5 dimensions down the road. See you all in 4 weeks. And on Capital City, so is that supposed to be the metropolis that's near Smallville? I mean, he wasn't living in they didn't change all those names in the show, did they?
I bet they did.
Maybe they did. Well, anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. Those creators are still doing great things today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Paris Collins, I loved his work on Blue Devil.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few years prior to when this Superboy series was out. So, I did not know he had done that. And in fact, Tom Peyer, Mark Waid, seems like I need to maybe seek out this series as well.
Right, and we just talked about Alan Davis and Adam Hughes on the Maze
exactly.
Agency.
You're just making me want to spend more money, George. So.
Isn't it great though? A lot of these people are still doing stuff
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I will
And
tell
great
you,
work.
I will tell you that this series is not on the DC Universe Infinite app because I checked.
Ooh,
I was hoping it
interesting.
would be so I could read the issue that you
Mm,
just went over. But it being a licensed property, I can see why they don't include it. But
true. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's your Superboy fix for this Christmas Gab Bag.
I liked it. Yeah.
So that was another mystery. Why was all this stuff happening?
Yes.
One plot thread not answered is the statue of Rutherford B. Small now on the ground and has to be put back on the pedestal. Is it broken?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They never went back to that. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Hold on. Let me check one. When Clark wakes up and he uses his vision to see, is this statue? Oh, now I got to check. No, you can't see it. Okay. Yeah, no. You think they tied that up, but they didn't.
When you were describing the events that that were going on before things were resolved, and given that you just said the next issue is about a certain imp, I
Yeah.
thought maybe the imp was behind what was
There
going
you
on
go.
in the issue. So that's funny.
Maybe that's when Mondragon comes back to make him say his name backwards.
That would be a nice callback.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I get you talked about, so your theme is mystery. My next selection also has a mystery,
Ooh.
but it fits my dark theme because this is a story out of Hellblazer number 250.
Ooh.
This is called The Curse of Christmas. So it's one story out of several that are in this extra sized issue of Hellblazer.
Mm.
And I did mention this issue on my recent episode 250, where I talked about a 250th issue or issues in my collection. And this is one of those, but I decided to hold off. And I think in fact, in that episode, I think I even threatened that George that I would bring this into the Gab Bag conversation. So anyway, so Hellblazer number 250. This came out in 2008. The Curse of Christmas is a story by Peter Milligan, Eddie Campbell, Dominic Regan, and Jared K. Fletcher. And so Milligan is one of those names, Vertigo names that I'm very familiar with. I would read a lot of Milligan's work through I'll just say several of the Vertigo titles at the time from DC Comics. Eddie Campbell is someone I am less familiar with, but I've seen some other works by Campbell, and this is not that. This is very different style from what I remember of reading some of his other stuff. But like I said, it's a very short story. All right, so the story opens up with a quick scene between this married couple somewhere, I assume London. She's wearing the what I think of as the traditional Christmas crown, paper mache, or I don't know the paper crown that I see a lot of people on British television programs wearing at Christmas time.
Well, because it's in the Christmas cracker. It's usually one of the prizes in the cracker.
Okay.
I think that's what it is.
All right. So anyway, so she walks into her husband's office. It looks like, her name is Sheena. His name is George, and basically, Sheena is irritated that George. George. I just realized this is not or biographical, is it, Trent?
Unless her name was Connie. I don't know.
That's true. Oh my God, how funny would that be?
Names have been changed to protect the
innocent. Right. Anyway, Sheena's not happy that George is working because it's Christmas, and he's he's supposed to spend time with the kids, come have Christmas lunch, all that kind of stuff. She tells him very specifically, angrily, in fact, to leave it, George.
Mm.
And then the caption box below that, it says, "It's a curse." You turn the page. Speaking of page turns, we go to this bar, the Granby, and good old John Constantine is sitting at the bar, and he's not alone. He's drinking, but he's not drinking with someone, but he is not alone because he's being haunted by a person who doesn't want to leave John alone until John actually helps him out. I guess, presumably to help get him to the other side or something. Go to the light, buddy. Go to the light. What people don't see here, but I'm sharing this with George, is this panel of Constantine. I thought every time I look at this page, George, the bottom right panel, as Constantine is taking a sip of his beer, he looks like a young William H. Macy.
You know what? He does.
The way that Campbell drew him. I thought that was really interesting. It doesn't quite look that way in other panels. But in this particular drawing, it's like, wow, that looks almost like Macy himself. But the ghost says to John, I could have been made junior finance minister in this winter's reshuffle. I worked my bleeps off. I don't know why I did. I don't know why I just bleeped that, considering what I said about my previous choice. All right, I'll just go for it. I worked my nuts off, and just when it looked as though I was headed for the top, he ended up dying. This is David Brown, MP, died a year ago today on Christmas Day, John tells us in his inner monologue. 2 other politicians died on the same day in similar circumstances. And then we get to see a quick flash of something that happened. Looks like a guy stabbed himself. John is having this conversation with Mr. Brown, and he says, what I don't get is how come you all died at exactly the same time in different parts of the country. So there's your mystery. Why these murders? What's going on here? John tells the ghost, Brown, that you were hexed, voodooed. Someone put a death curse on you, a real humdinger. But he doesn't know how or what's going on. And then the bartender's like, everybody quiet. It's the Queen's speech. And John realizes the Queen, the same time, every year. So it must be the Queen. But no, we get to cut back to George and Sheena, and they're putting their presents in the car. I assume they're going to go visit somebody, some family. And John shows up, telling George, David Brown told me about you. He told me how ambitious you were, how for the last 2 years you've written the passages the Prime Minister inserted into the Queen's Christmas speech. Everyone listens to the Queen's speech. You inserted a spell, a death curse that would get rid of your political rivals. George, of course, protests. He has no idea what Constantine is talking about. John gets a little physical with the guy, grabbing his face. Where'd you get it? Who gave you the curse? And then Sheena walks in. He doesn't know. Because Sheena is the one. She just flats out admits it, mostly to George. Because she's like, dude, I did this for you. I was not going to stand by and watch you get trampled over by those other men. My grandmother did more than teach me a few old Celtic songs, you know. And then they get into a fight. And then John lights up a cigarette and starts to walk away. Oh, yes, the fights, the arguments. 364 days of pent-up anger and spite spewed out over cheap mince pies. Christmas Day, a fucking curse. The end. And okay, so I will say that I chose this because this is exactly, well, okay, maybe not exactly, but I feel like this about, despite the fact that you and I do this every year.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about this on one of my Gutters episodes. December is not my favorite time of the year. In fact, it is my least favorite time of the year for various reasons. And Christmas is part of that. So I completely can understand the sentiment that John is expressing in this story. So I got a big chuckle out of the ending of this one.
I could just picture you're at a tree lighting, and everybody's, oh, they're all revelers there, and they're having fun, and ooh, 3, 2, 1, the tree, and then you walk by, and right. As far as I know, you don't smoke, but let's say you have a bubblegum cigarette, you're walking by, and that freaking curse. Uh,
I'm gonna have to keep
now,
that in mind when I go to a tree lighting next time.
now, you mentioned how because of certain angles, the way the artist drew characters and stuff, there was one where Constantine looked like William H. Macy,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't look that way in any other panel. In the panel that you showed me, it was the last panel with Sheena and George. George looked a little like Richard Nixon, didn't he? Just because of the length of his nose and maybe a little bit of the jowls.
Yes, yeah, I could see that.
But he didn't look that way in any other panel.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think his nose was as large in any other panel.
No,
so it is weird how
it didn't look like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is difficult. We're not criticizing because heck, I'm no artist. If I tried to draw Superman twice, he's not going to look his face isn't going to look the same.
God, no.
On either one. Yeah. No.
But the Queen, I have to say the Queen looked pretty good.
Yeah.
The
don't mess with
the Queen. Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't mess with the Queen.
She'll get James Bond on you right away. 12-year-old reference to the 2012 Olympics with her supposedly jumping out of an airplane with Daniel Craig. Unlike Tom Cruise, who this year really flew down from the top of the stadium. But I digress. Oh, but how many pages was that? Was that another 5-pager?
Yeah, I think so.
Man, that was pretty good for 5 pages.
Right? I mean,
but wait. Okay, so first of all, as a result of his conversation with Sheena and George, did he resolve having is that ghost still going to follow him around? And also,
yeah, you're right.
As he walks away, are we still going to get politicians dying at the same time every year going forward? So there's really no resolution.
You're right. You're right. I was so enamored with the humor, if you will, of the of the story. Yeah, that's a big gaping plot hole. Exactly.
I wonder if that comes back to haunt him in every holiday issue that follows. We'll have to find out. All right. I told you my theme unintentionally was mysteries. So we had the Maze Agency, which has mystery built in because they're detectives. There was the mystery in the Superboy story as to what the heck is going on, that everybody has powers and a statue comes to life and all this stuff. And those 2 issues I told you I had bought randomly when I was at a convention in the fall. But I wasn't kidding around, Eric. I do plan my next Gab Bag once a Gab Bag ends. Because I say to myself, I could have talked about this book. I could have talked about that book, especially with the posts, comic-related posts that people that you and I probably both follow make around this time of year, whether it be covers of holiday issues or interiors of books that had a holiday theme. So at least one book, this last book, is one that I had picked pretty much after we ended our last Gab Bag in 2023. And that is this book, Batman number 247 from the original run, volume 1. I don't know what volume Batman's up to now. It is the February 1973 issue, so it came out around the holidays in 72. So the oldest book that I'll be talking about, and had a cover price of 20 cents.
Oh, wow.
At the top, I looked it up. I looked up Batman logos, comic book logos, because this is one of my favorite logos from the Batman comic. And when I looked up all the different logos that Batman has had over time, this is, if I'm looking at things chronologically from what I've looked up, this is the last logo that I've liked on a Batman comic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all the subsequent ones just don't do anything for me, at least the way I see them. So if this is in the order that these came out, this is the last logo on a Batman comic that I really liked. All the rest just fall short for me.
Huh.
So that right there, it brings me back. Not just a 20-cent price tag or this cover, which they don't make covers like this anymore. At the top, it says special holiday issue. And on the cover, which is by Dick Giordano, and I had to look it up. It was inked by Gaspar Saladino. Unfamiliar with the name, but of course familiar with Dick Giordano. It is a bird's eye view of the ball dropping, with Batman tied to the ball, and a goon with a gas mask and a vial in his hand, holding onto the rope that the ball is descending on. And he has changed the type on the ball from Happy New Year. He crosses out happy and he writes deadly. So it's Deadly New Year. And as he's holding the vial, he says, at the stroke of midnight, everybody in Gotham gets struck dead. And down below, you see some people running in the street. Love covers like this. They fit in with the logo. And I miss stuff like this. So let's get into the credits here. I'm going to open the book. Story by Denny O'Neil. Art by Irv Novick and Dick Giordano. And it's edited by Julius Schwartz. They don't give the letterer any credit here. So I don't know who did the lettering. And it is, you see, the Batman in Merry Christmas. Very simple. The Batman in Merry Christmas. It's a dark and snowy night as we open our tale on Christmas Eve, as a couple and their child trudge uphill in the snow toward a house on the summit. Batman is heading to the same house on the opposite side of the hill. The couple's car had broken down, and they're looking for shelter and a phone. And I want to make note that the wife's name is Martha. Has nothing to do with the story, but especially these days, Martha is a big deal. Just like if you see 52 anywhere in a DC comic,
right.
You go, ooh, 52. Yeah. The homeowner is gruff and tells them to go away. At that point, someone off panel says, "Nah, let him in." Turns out that person is Chimp Manners, the dude who swiped a vial of the Army's top secret nerve gas. Martha recognizes him, and he says now he'll have to kill everybody in the house. You're dead, all of you. And the way he's drawn, he looks like a bad guy. He looks like a hired goon. But,
But I mean, given that his name is Chimp,
yeah.
I mean, this guy's had a hard life.
He was already named to be a goon, a hired thug. Good old Chimp Manners. Oh. Then Batman replies, okay, so remember, he says, "You're dead, all of you." And Batman replies, "Including me, Manners?" Batman explains he had examined a nearby helicopter crash, which we didn't see any of this, by the way, and figured Chimp would head for the closest shelter, which just happened to be this house. Batman quickly disarms Chimp, but Chimp's ace in the hole is the nerve gas. He threatens to release the nerve gas because he says he has nothing to lose. So, kill you or kill me, I don't care at this point. So Batman gives Manners back his gun. Big mistake, Batman. Manners escorts them all outside to execute them. Batman tells him he doesn't have to shoot the kid, but Manners doesn't like loose ends. He's about to shoot Batman when a bright light dazzles him. Batman takes advantage of the distraction and knocks him out.
I love how Chimp is very conscientious about not spilling blood in the house, because presumably the cleaning bills.
Well, he remember he took over the house.
Right.
He was holding the homeowner hostage.
He's being really nice to the guy he's about to kill.
But he did mention, he did make a reference. He said, "I'm probably going to have to hole up in this dump for a while, so I don't want all your blood.
Oh, that's
I don't
true.
want your
Yeah.
dead bodies."
Very
yeah.
true.
So
Yeah.
he's thinking ahead. He's planning ahead. He's a planner.
He might be a chimp, but he's not a chump.
So now the chimp is knocked out. I'm going to read right from the page 6 here. He's out like the proverbial light. says the guy, the father of the family. And Batman looks up and he says, "Speaking of lights, I want to thank whoever shot that flare." And the homeowner says, "Fella, it wasn't any flare, it was a star. I've studied astronomy for 40 years," which you could tell because there was a scene with a telescope and the kid was going to touch the telescope. And the homeowner said, "Hey, kid, don't touch that telescope. It cost me thousands of dollars," or whatever. So the guy tells Batman, "And I'm telling you, I've got no idea where it came from or where it went, but that was a star, believe me." And Batman looks up and he goes, "I do. It sure looks like it's going to be a Merry Christmas." And at the bottom of the page, page 6, it says, "The holiday excitement is only beginning. For the thrilling story of the Batman's New Year's Eve, turn to the second page following."
Ah, see, I read this on the DC Universe Infinite app, and there is no such text
No?
at the bottom of that page. Yeah, so I turned the page. It's like Batman says this, and then you turn the page, and then you get another credit
Yes.
first page, but it continues the story. But it's just it's yeah, that's really interesting. They well, I mean, they took it out obviously because they didn't have an extra page in between.
True.
But still, it's like you said, it starts off. The title of this is The Batman in Merry Christmas, and there's not even a ... there. And then you go to the next one, and you'll say what it is, but there is a ... there. So it's just a weird way for them to tell this story and having this long title that you don't know about until 7 pages in.
Yeah. And they start renumbering it too. So
I
when
noticed
you get to
that
this
too.
page,
Yeah.
it's Batman in ... and a Deadly New Year. Story by Denny O'Neil or by Dick Giordano, it says at the top. And yeah, so a lot of comics like this, it would be a chapter 1, a chapter 2,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't get the renumbered pages, but it is like another story. A 6-page Christmas story, and then however many pages this is, New Year's Eve story.
That is true. Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot more sense if you think about it like that, instead of just like one big holiday around the same time story. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, I before you go on to this under the New Year part, what the one thing I like about go ahead.
Have we done a New Year's story? That was one of the things that
I don't remember.
attracted me to this. I know we've done Hanukkah.
Yeah.
We haven't done a Thanksgiving, I don't think. And I don't think we've done a New Year's. Maybe we have. I don't know. But that's what attracted me to this one. And that's why I kept it on my list after I bought these other 2 books. I wanted to have a New Year's story.
Well, wait. So is it? I mean, no, it does. It does say Christmas Eve. Okay. So the first part is set at Christmas Eve. But then it's New Year's?
The rest of the story takes place during the week between.
Oh, that's right, because he's traveling. Oh, okay. Okay, before we get into the New Year's part then, George, I just want to say what I like about this first part is, the whole Star of Bethlehem, the whole seeking shelter at in the manger, so to speak. There wasn't a threat of murder, but it's very much the story of Jesus in this first few pages of a Batman comic.
As you said, now it's a new story, so to speak, and Batman is escorting the now revived Chimp Manners. I keep on calling him Chip Masters. I don't know why.
Yeah.
That's where my mind is going. But Chimp Manners down the mountain to a car. And he says, "I've already alerted Commissioner Gordon by phone. He'll be waiting for us at the Gotham City limits with a squad of police. You'll be spending 1973 behind bars and a whole lot of the following years." And then, so here we are in 2024, and we're reading something saying in 1973, you're going to be behind bars for a very long time. And then Chimp says, "If we reach Gotham, Batman." So Batman turns to Chimp and says, "Oh, come on, you surely can't expect to escape." And then he goes, "Yeah, we'll see, tough guy." I note that Batman is not in his Batmobile here. He's in, I don't know, is this a Pontiac? I'm going to have to post this on social media because I don't know that much about cars. But it's just a regular car. It's not a Batmobile. It's, why was he driving in a regular car?
Oh yeah, yeah. Good point. When you first said that, I was thinking that is that the the 70s Batmobile that he used to tool around in that didn't look like what we think of as a Batmobile. And
Yeah.
I don't know about your version of the or the print book, but
Mm-hmm.
they color it green at first on that first page of the second part of the story, and then on the next page, literally the next
Blue.
page, it's blue.
It's blue. Mm-hmm. One thing I do want to say before we get into this, talking about extrapolating some throwaway thing like the Mondragon thing from Superboy, and saying, "Oh, let's go back to this and get all those all those religious icons and things like that, ceremonial things." I would love for somehow somebody comes back to this, and it's like Green Arrow saying, I was following you, Batman, trying, because I also heard about the helicopter crash. You were ahead of me, and I was watching you through my binoculars, and I saw what was going on. So I couldn't, I was too far away for I didn't have a distance arrow. So I thought if I shot a flare arrow, it would distract the perpetrator. And like I wanted to be something like that. Like somebody ties it back like 30 years later.
Yeah.
Although obviously it's better that it's the North Star or whatever star it was that saved the day. But again, that seems like a thing that like today's writers would do. They would find something like this and say, "Oh, Batman, I've been following you for 30 years now. I've been the one who's been behind the scenes saving you and stuff." So as we were saying, Batman's in a non-Batmobile, whatever car it is. Batman is run off the road by a truck carrying Christmas trees and also some masked goons. Batman fights off the garden variety thugs, as he calls him, as best he can, with Chimp handcuffed to him. But they eventually get the best of him because, again, he's fighting one-handed. And, I mean, Chimp is right there kind of like punching him also.
Helping them out, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm going to read this part. After he gets knocked out, caption box from the omniscient narrator tells us, then a tall, well-dressed man steps to the fallen crime fighter. You don't see the guy's face. You only see him from the waist down. This is the part where I probably wouldn't have thought of this as a kid, but you have to think of it now. How many covers of comics had the threat that the superhero was going to be unmasked in public? So here Batman is laid out. He could have been unmasked. Heck, they could have shot him because Chimp had threatened to shoot him and the other people, and yet they just leave him.
Yeah.
In fact, the mysterious, well-dressed man says, excellent. He should nap for hours. We'll take his car and leave the truck. And one of the masked guys says, might as well. It was only rented under a phony name, as if they're leaving Batman with, with hardship. And as Batman comes to, he notices the vial is gone. They took the vial back, and he goes to the truck, and all he finds is an invitation that he says Bruce Wayne also received. And the invitation says, you are cordially invited to a New Year's Eve gala at the Gotham City Top Room, December 31st, 1972, formal dress, proceeds to go to charity, RSVP. It's very mysterious that Bruce Wayne received a similar note. So what do you think about that, though? I mean, there's the convenience of Batman is prone on the ground, helpless, and everything that everybody threatens to do to him, they don't do.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing, reading several stories like this from this time period where, well, one, he's not the Bat God, and he makes mistakes, and he gets knocked out all the time.
Right.
Because you gotta extend the plot with the bad guys. And yeah, if Chimp was gonna kill him, just really mere moments ago.
Yep.
Why not just shoot him now? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then take off his mask and all that. Yeah, it's just one of those Batman comic book conceits that you just have
Mm-hmm.
to go with.
Well, let's not be nitpicky, right, Eric? Batman reports in to Commissioner Gordon, who shares a note that recently arrived to the police station. It's a threat to release that stolen nerve gas on Gotham if a person named Boss Hallstrom is not released from prison by later that week. Gordon informs Batman that Hallstrom has died of a heart attack the night before. They both agree no one will ever believe that. Later, at Wayne Manor, Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, and Alfred plan their strategy. Bruce believes there's a mole at the Gotham City Police Department and someone knew about his route when escorting Manners. Dick will go undercover as a police cadet in an effort to discover the leak, as one does. Alfred will try to find a connection between Boss Hallstrom and the invited guests at the gala. Batman pays a visit to a person named Dr. Harris Blaine to ask what he might know about Project J, which is the nerve gas. Kind of found it interesting. It was Project J, like Joker. And Joker always has the gas and stuff. I know it has nothing to do with that, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
I didn't even think of that when I read this. That's great, George.
It has nothing to do with it, but I just thought it was kind of funny. One of the key things Dr. Blaine says is the nerve gas, once released, would smell like violets. Now, this Dr. Blaine, I think, is one of those, if you read comics from different periods, depending on the writer, you have different supporting cast. I have the feeling, based on the letter column, Blaine at least has appeared once prior to this. So he might have been built in as the go-to scientific person for Batman for a while.
Well, and Denny O'Neil liked to use characters like this as part of Batman's arsenal, if you will.
Batman goes to a seedy bar in his Matches Malone guise. So here we have Bruce, we have Batman, we have Matches. So this is great. Asking if the bartender has seen Chimp. The barkeep says no, but Batman notices someone delivering food to the private back room. Batman sheds the Matches guise and pays a visit to the back room where Chimp and a buddy are just chilling out eating the food. Guns are drawn, and in the melee, Chimp shoots out the only light in the room. His pal shoots blindly in the dark, and Batman knocks him out. And it turns out the thug shot and killed Chimp, and any chance of Batman getting any information. So Chimp is dead, the other thug is knocked out, and now Batman has no way of getting information out of Chimp because he's dead. Meanwhile, at the Meanwhile, at the police station, I do that too often, I'm sorry. Meanwhile, at the police station, Robin finds a wiretap on Commissioner Gordon's phone. Apparently that there was a fill-in engineer there on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, whatever night that took place, because the other guy had called in sick. They don't know who the person is, but now they know how the tap got there. Alfred finds out there are 3 millionaires. Note, back then, they weren't billionaires like they would be in an issue today. They were millionaires that were invited to the gala, whose fortunes were in danger until about a month ago when each received a large sum of cash. These wind up being our 3 prime suspects: Ennett, Grogan, and Van Dyne. No relation to Janet Van Dyne, by the way, or at least as I can tell.
Right.
With the gala approaching and no way to provide Hallstrom to the terrorist, Batman comes up with a plan. We go right to the book. In the Batcave, Batman tells Robin, "I hate to ruin your Christmas vacation, kid." And Robin, who's bent over a table at a lab with little beakers and he's mixing things, he goes, "No sweat. I mean, I'm lucky. The other college students are attending dances, shows, escorting fair maidens, hither and yon. Silly stuff like that. Me, I get to closet myself in a nice damp cave with a lot of smelly chemicals. I'm lucky. Sure am." So at first I thought he was serious, but then as I read on, I'm like, oh, you're being sarcastic.
Yes. Yes. I really loved having, Robin and Alfred being part of the investigation, having an active role in it. And it's not just Batman running down clues and whatnot.
I agree.
I just love this. Even and then yeah, just that little.
And the fact that it's a mystery, you may have qualms with gaps or, like us joking around about a couple of things, but he was really, this is the era of the Dark Knight Detective. This is him solving a mystery.
Right.
Which is great.
Well, and yeah, speaking of Dick again, Dick Grayson here, the look on his face, that what do you, how do you characterize it's not a smile, smirk?
Yeah, pretty much.
Sarcastic smirk.
I got to remember to put that on social media too, I think. I like a little, if you know kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Well, Bruce arrives at the gala and he bumps into the three millionaires that are our suspects. Well, three of my favorite people, Ennett, Grogan, and Van Dyne. And one of them says, ready for a bout of celebrating? The other guy says, Bruce is always ready for a party. Another guy says, I can already taste the champagne and caviar. So here are your millionaires, and Bruce is with his suspects. Now, Eric, you read this. So I would like to point out that what the resolution I'm about to describe, no pun intended, get it, resolution, happens in 2.5 pages. This would not happen in a comic today. As midnight draws near, someone at Bruce's table, one of our three suspects, mentions, in 5 minutes, 1972 will be past history. I love putting things in time like this. Again, 1972. Bruce signals Alfred, who breaks a bottle near the table. Someone mentions they smell violets, and Ennett jumps out of his seat with a horrified look on his face and grabs a gas mask from his jacket. Batman comes in and knocks him out. As he knocks him out, he says, you gave yourself away because you recognized the violet smell and what that would mean. He noticed that Ennett glanced toward the window when he feared that the nerve gas had been released. And Batman deduces that the bomb is on the Happy New Year ball that is descending from the rooftop to the ground. So unlike the one in Times Square, where the ball descends on a rooftop, this one is descending from a rooftop down a couple of stories to the ground. The nerve gas is attached to a time bomb on the ball. Batman jumps out the window, crashes through the window, jumps onto the ball as it's descending, and he says, there it is, stuck with tape, with a timer attached. Only seconds to reach it. And here we go, 3 panels are left, and it's only half a page. Because the other half a page is an ad. So there's a worm's eye view, people looking up at Batman on the ball. Hey, looky there, the Batman's taking himself a ride. And as the ball hits the ground, the guy yells out, Happy New Year, Pally. And Batman, holding the vial in one hand and the bomb in the other hand, says, yeah, it sure is. The end. Next issue on sale on or about February 13th. And then there's a half page, one of those famous from that time period. It's a half page ad for Batman 100-page Spectacular.
Yeah, it does seem to resolve itself pretty quickly.
Yeah, and again, it's a one-issue story. This is the way things were. And again, as a kid, if I was reading this would be fantastic. As an adult, you see the gaps, you see the suspension, the real suspension of disbelief, and how actually there are some inconsistencies with the time. Like I think they say they have something like 53 hours left, but it's the day before New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So how could you possibly have that much time? Like there's some gaps there, but I didn't really want to focus on that too much.
When you were first talking about this, or when we talked about my confusion about the time frame, and then you reminded me that the rest of the issue took place over a certain amount of time. I started thumbing through the pages to see, okay, this is Boxing Day, this is the day after, and I'm trying to count down to New Year's Eve to see if it's actually displayed on the pages. night and day. And
Right.
I don't know if they actually did that, but
They
yeah,
didn't, and they should have. I think that would have been more of a benefit than to say we have 50, having a conversation saying we have
yeah,
53 hours left, yet New Year's Eve is the next night. It would have been nice just in the caption box to say December 27th, December 29th, that kind of thing.
yeah.
I think that would have
Well, what
done
what they
better.
what they did is they do like Monday night and Tuesday night, and
Hmm.
but
Right.
that doesn't really help. So because we don't know when, like, I guess we could extrapolate, but it's just anyway, it just unnecessarily complicated when they could have made it very easy, like you said.
There was another part where the note, the threatening note that was sent to the police department said that the boss Hallstrom had to be released by Saturday night, or the nerve gas would be released. So at first I thought Saturday was New Year's Eve, but Sunday was New Year's Eve. So that was a little confusing too. The
Oh
gala
yeah.
was on Sunday. So if he had not been released, then it was the next day that the terrorist action was going to take place, which is,
Hmm.
kind of weird. But um, yeah, I try not to get too bogged down in that. But, I was flipping back and forth saying, wait, what day is it?
Yeah, I think sometimes Denny O'Neil got a little too tried to do things a little too, I don't know. What am I trying to say here? Throwing in too many details that you get
Yeah.
lost in things a little bit.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, it was an enjoyable little story.
And there were a couple of things, like, for instance, the helicopter crash at the beginning of the story. I mean, you didn't see that. The story, you really do start it off with Chimp Manners has already gone in and taken over the house. So you only get the whole thing, like, how is Batman here? Oh, there was a helicopter crash. But you surmise that Chimp was on the helicopter. Well, was he flying the helicopter? What happened to the other people in the helicopter? What was going on there?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. Whereas that would have been a whole issue in a 6-issue telling of the same story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not, it's kind of neat that it starts off, in what's that en media race. My Latin sucks. But it starts off already. The story's already started.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't get to see that beginning part, but
Right. And you really don't need it.
yeah, you don't. I will say though that the whole violet smelling thing of the nerve gas was just really one of those hokey details that comic book writers sometimes threw into their stories, and maybe even they still do. I don't know. Where it's like, wow, that's not gonna, that's not Chekhov's gun in the story at
Yeah,
all.
right. Mm-hmm.
But it was just like, well, that's an easy thing to set up, in other
Yeah.
words. But
Mm-hmm.
because the doctor Harris Blaine says at some point in the story is like that, but that's just my guess. Basically, I don't know that for sure, and yet it turns out to be for sure.
Right. Batman has already run off, like he does, like he disappears.
Yeah.
Blaine turns around, Batman's not there anymore, and Batman uses that. Like, what if Blaine had said, "Oh wait, I didn't mean Violet.
Yes, that's right.
I,
I meant roses. I don't know.
I meant lavender.
Lavender. Yeah, exactly. And speaking of Blaine, because because of something you said, I was like, wait a minute, is this the same character that I saw or I read in some other Batman issues? And it is indeed the same character. I just didn't recognize him in the way that Giordano drew him. He first appeared in Batman 242. And this is the epic Ra's al Ghul confrontation that Batman goes on to finally defeat Ra's, and or at least back then. But Blaine is one of the people that he recruits to help him do this, along with some other characters. So and then he also appears in Batman: Son of the Demon some years later.
Funny you mentioned that, because the letters page includes letters for Batman 244, which is the end of that story.
Ah, okay.
The Demon Lives Again by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And a letter writer asks about some characters that I guess had been introduced, not only Dr. Blaine, but some other characters. And he said something like, will supporting characters like Blaine just be forgotten like most supporting characters are? And it's funny because then the editor says, well, I hope you're happy that Dr. Blaine is in this issue. And another letter writer mentioned that in that same issue, there was an 8-page Robin backup story, which I know you like Robin, written by Elliot Megan.
Oh.
And it was an 8-page story called The Teenage Trap. Not much detail was given in the letter column about it. The person just said, I like the story, and hopefully Elliot will be around. And then, it's funny to hear the editor say, yeah, young Elliot Megan, But, there was a letter writer, I wasn't even going to say this, but since you mentioned that it was the whole epic, there was a person who said they didn't like the story. I would have liked the latest battle between Batman and Ra's al Ghul much more. I am sad to say if it had only been a one-issue novel. The second half of the epic, which began in Batman 243, promised, as did the first, to climax Batman's long and fascinating duel with this frightening character. Instead, we are left with a rather vapid plot with an ending both deja vu and deus ex machina. And then it goes on how the person was disappointed about how the whole thing played itself out.
Geez, these critics.
I know. Damn kids.
Not like us at all.
And that letter writer, Mark Wade. No, just kidding. The only ad of note in here, the ads were kind of disappointing in this one. The only ad that only popped out at me only because of recent occurrences, there was an ad for the Easy Bake Oven. And the thing is, what does it say? Sally, here, I'll go to it. Sally visits the Easy Bake toy factory. And there's a person in a suit leading her around the toy factory, and he says, we don't just make the greatest girls' toy dolls. We make other things too, like the Easy Bake Oven. And it made me wonder if in the Barbie movie, when they had, you saw Barbie, right?
The one with
the movie.
Oh yeah,
Margot
yeah.
Robbie.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Will Ferrell was in it as like an office suit, and there was a whole office there. I'm wondering if there were other ads like this about somebody visiting the Barbie factory or something like that. And the person, the business people leading the kids around, I wonder if that was a thing. And that's where they took, we need to get the Mattel people in we need the suits in here. I wonder if it comes from these ads.
Huh.
I don't know. It might just be a one-off. I'm reading too much into it, but kind of interesting to see the business people showing the girl around the warehouse where they make the Easy Bake Oven. Oh, and unlike the Maze Agency, where they tried to give the reader clues to figure out the mystery, there was really, they gave you 3 suspects, but there were, it wasn't up to you to figure it out. It was for Batman to create the violet smell to draw the person out. So it was still a mystery, but it wasn't for the reader to solve.
Yeah. All right. Well, for my final selection, George, I will continue the debauchery that I have started in this episode. Here, I'm gonna share this with you so you can see what I'm talking about. But my selection is from the series called Curse Words.
Charles Soule, right?
Yeah, Charles Soule.
Yeah.
Normally drawn by Ryan Brown, but this holiday special, which is part of the second volume that was collected called Explosion Town, was and I'm showing George the cover of this. The cover was done by Ryan Brown, but the interiors, as George will see in a minute, was done by Mike Norton. So, do you know? Have you read anything involving Curse Words, the series? No.
I mean, I'm aware of the series. I've heard people talk about it, but I've never read it.
Yeah, and so a complete mystery to me. It was so weird, both with Blue Monday and Curse Words now, because it's kind of the same thing. It's like it's a story within a collection of characters I have no dealing with, no
Interesting.
understanding, no history with them. And I'm reading this going, what the hell am I reading? First. And then second, after I got done with this holiday special, I'm like, I got to find out more about these characters. And then I went and read the very first issue of Curse Words because I do have several collected digital volumes of this. So I want to give you some background information before we get into this, George. In case you're, well, I know you're not, but in case also other people that are listening, if you're not familiar with these characters that I'm going to reference, you might want to know who they are. So let me start off here. So we get this holiday special cover. We got some characters gathered around what looks like a very dark Christmas tree, but there are lights on it and some other things. I'm not quite sure. There's a couple toasting each other in the foreground. And just a little Santa hat with a spiked ball at the top, just kind of hovering there. But I'll explain that anyway. There's a bunch of characters there. They look a bit ominous, I'll say. Not your typical superheroes for sure. Anyway, so Curse Words is basically about Wizard or Wizard. It's spelled Wizord. So in my head, I constantly have to pronounce it Wizard. I don't think that's what they intend. He's a sorcerer who comes to Earth to prepare it for domination by his master, and then decides that he likes it here and rebels. So that's your basic setup from issue 1 of Curse Words. Other characters are Margaret, which is Wizard's assistant, who is a koala bear. Although I don't think you see, I think you see Margaret as something else in this holiday special. Syzygy is Wizard's former boss, the guy he rebels against, who does appear in this. Cornwall is another character that works for Syzygy. Botchko is a hog tour, and you see him, George, on the cover here. He's in the middle, in between the two in the foreground. He's a hog tour, George. I mean, just saying that just makes me want to giggle. And then there's Ruby Stitch, who is Wizard's former flame. I'll put it that way. At least when the series gets going. In the holiday special, some other characters appear. One is named Caruso, who has the ability to transform body parts into a cohesive creature, I'll just say, and I'll explain that in a minute. Clearboy is invisible, and that explains the floating Santa hat on the cover here. Silly Bee, I guess, brings things to life, or at least does in the story. Lady Violet is Cornwall's sister. Those are the two in the kind of the background that are right next to each other, George. And then finally, Carbuncle, who is the character who is the tree topper on the Christmas tree here. And he's I guess I in my notes I just put down evil medicine man. Anyway, many of these characters form the 9, who are Syzygy's loyal servants. And Syzygy's that's such a difficult name to say. Syzygy's domain is called the Whole World, HOLE. All right, so that's the background for Curse Words. But the holiday special. So this is it's holidays in the whole world, as it says here. And it's some years before the events of issue 1 of Curse Words. Syzygy, who is portrayed here, and I think he's portrayed similarly in issue 1. I can't quite remember, but he's just kind of like this black void of in a human form with glowing eyes in the holiday special. Declares that winter is here and it's time to celebrate their accomplishments. It's time for the meat. Meatmeet, George. Meat. And you're asking yourself, what is a meat? Well, Botchko comes in with a bag full of meat collected from various creatures in the land. And then Caruso, who is basically clothed in what looks like emeralds, she forms the mess into this menagerie monster in a very kind of grotesque, very well drawn, grotesque sequence of panels here, where things are getting stitched and splitched and snacked together, and gets turned into this. I don't even know how to describe this creature, George. A cross between a human, an elephant, fly. I don't know, but it's this big mass of stuff with big eyes that they name Jane. After they name the creature, Syzygy gives it a magical boost and sends it on its way. He then tells the Nine to give Jane some time and distance, and then announces the one who traps it gains great favor with him. So it's just, a hunt. Now that I think about it, it's kind of like those British fox hunts. Do they do those around Christmas time? I don't know, but
it sounds like something that they do around in the wintertime. Maybe.
I think so. But anyway, so the various people of the Nine head off to, or they're about to head off to do this. Syzygy asks if Wizard will win again, because he's done that many years in a row. But Cornwall declares he and his sister will win, and then they go off and start the hunt. Cornwall and Lady Violet cast a tracking spell and find Jane attacking a chess city, because you see the pawns with legs and arms running away from the fire breathing Jane.
Yeah.
It's
who did this artwork again?
This is Mike Norton doing this.
Oh, right, Mike Norton. Wow.
It's so weird. It just begs me to read more about the whole world to find out, what is this place and why is it
going on?
Yeah, what is going on here? Anyway, so they've arrived. They're about ready to trap Jane, and then Wizard shows up and is about to put them to sleep and snatch victory from their grasp, when they're attacked by somebody else. And it turns out to be Ruby Stitch, who knocks him out and claims victory by capturing Jane. Wizard himself has made himself basically invisible, so no one knows he's there, but he's witnessing all this. And then they go back to Syzygy's hall, and apparently Jane gets roasted or something like that. I mean, it looks kind of, on the page, it looks kind of small compared to how big Jane looked previously, so I'm not quite sure. But Syzygy's he's wearing a Christmas sweater, which, I love the humor of this book, much like Blue Monday. It's like this just really made me laugh out loud several times. Cornwall and his sister are like, basically they're like, throughout the rest of the scene, they're like, didn't we capture Jane? But it turns out that after Syzygy hands out his favors, his gifts, I'll come back to that. But what you find out is that both Cornwall and his sister had a spell placed on them, wiping their memories. And Wizard confronts Ruby Stitch about this, and he knows that she did it because that's what he's done in the past. He's allowed them to track the the meat object and then steals the victory from them. So we'll come back to that scene, but I wanted to go over the gifts that Syzygy gave his 9. So much like in the Blue Monday story, right? Everybody gets gifts. I thought that was a nice repetition. But a tomb of medical oddities for Carbuncle, 2 perfect emeralds for Caruso to see, so that she can see through. That made me really curious about this character, and because it seemed like she could see earlier, but I don't know. Clairboy gets a mirror. I love it. Botchko, the hog tour. I can't say that word enough. Gets a cowboy hat. Silly Bee gets a dead rabbit and a mouse. Okay. And to Cornwall and Lady Violet, who keep, like I said, they keep thinking that they had won this thing. Syzygy bequeaths his love, indulgence, patience, and tolerance, to which they are very grateful, instead of his wrath. Wizard gains Syzygy's greatest gift, he says, his trust. And you could, as I spoiled issue 1, you could see why that is that's a funny sort of callback. And then finally, the winner of the Meet, Ruby Stitch, receives an iPod. And to which he says, "But what is it? What does it do?" And Syzygy says, "Just give it a try. I think you'll dig it." And then that's when, so she's out on the balcony later, and that's when Wizard confronts her with the truth about what she did. But she's enjoying it. She's singing along with something. I mean, the words, the lyrics here that they show in the panel is, "Baby, you're a." I don't know how to pronounce that word, George. Come show what your word. I don't know. If you walk, baby, you're if you walk. Come show what your were.
I don't know. I'm trying to sound it out phonetically.
Yeah, without the melody, it's really hard to.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ruby Stitch takes Wizard's accusation, or his declaration, I should say, as a threat, and at first, and he's like, nah, and he reveals he's been doing the same thing, and they just kind of after that they just kind of look at each other, and she says, "This thing has some fantastic music on it. I was going to take it back home, cast an amp spell on it, have a party." Wizard says, "Okay, and you think you might want to come?" And again, they just kind of look at each other. It's foreshadowing what we know has already occurred if you've read issue 1 and beyond, which I will eventually. And Wizard says, "Sure. What's the worst that could happen?" And as far as I know, like I said, I've only read issue 1 of the series. I'm pretty sure that Ruby Stitch wants to kill him.
But wait, that's it? I mean, because I see at the bottom it says "Happy Holidays," like the end.
Happy Holidays. That is it.
How many pages was that?
Let's see. It was 20 pages. Yeah.
All right. Looks like the majority of it's a couple of pages, and Jane is introduced, and then the rest of that happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But that seemed to go pretty far. Well, that's like a double-page spread there,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which in digital, you can't really...
Showing Jane flying off,
Yeah.
But it's just...
Oh, wait a minute. Is that the logo? Oh, I didn't see it before because of the way the digital's laid out. It says curse words behind her.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Huh. Nice. I'm familiar with Ryan Brown's layouts from 8 Billion Genies that he also did with Charles Soule. And they have another thing coming out. I forget what it's called. Something in Halo or something like that. Well, anyway. But this being Mike Norton... I've heard of Mike Norton. I've seen his stuff, but I'm not an aficionado. So I'm not sure, is he trying to emulate what Brown has done on the book?
I think so, based on
by
what I've
doing
seen.
clever things like that? Like even this page layout that you have in front of me here. You know?
I don't know about that, actually. I'm not familiar enough with Brown's work to
Hmm.
really say.
Hmm.
But the style, the way the characters look is very similar, I think,
Yeah.
to the what Brown is doing. But yeah, this was probably my favorite of the three that I talked about today.
Well, even over here, like on the page you're showing again, nobody can see this, but what Ryan Brown does, like in 8 Billion Genies, is he'll incorporate sound effects into his artwork. And in some cases, very, very small, and you have to really kind of hunt it out. But like here, Eric's showing a panel where I guess it's a sword or some sort of weapon is slashing something, and it says slash, but with a ZH at the end. And then when Jane was being created, there was like a sound effect incorporated into the artwork, splitch. You even said the word splitch. Oh, and over here, snick, snick, snack, snack. I mean, the way it seems like Mike Norton is doing it the way Ryan Brown does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just a delight. It's horribly anachronistic because they talk just like, we do, but it's a very clearly a fantasy setting with, magic and wizards and stuff. And it's not what you think of. It's not Lord of the Rings style of fantasy creatures and magic and all that kind of stuff. And it's just funny. I found it to be really funny. The visuals are funny, the writing's funny, the characters are funny. So
I don't know if Rodney got into this book, but I could swear Rich and Kristen did.
oh, I totally can see them reading curse words.
I think they had the store at the time Curse Words was coming out. So it would make sense. Like this could have been one of their picks.
Yeah.
And they would recommend this all the time. I've never read it, but
yeah. And I have other podcasting friends that have talked about curse words before, and I've always wanted to check into it and just never found the time and obviously here. So
nice. Well, we've introduced each other to a bunch of different things,
right?
haven't we? Yeah.
I love it when we do that.
All right.
So I want to remind everybody that, and George mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but he and I are sharing this episode in our respective feeds at Meanwhile at the Podcast and the Longbox Review feeds. So whether you listen here or you're listening there, thank you very much for doing so. George, thank you for again joining me on this now several year. I forget how many years. I counted right before we got online to talk, and I don't remember what it is.
It's
7 or 8? 7? I think it's 7 maybe.
Did we start this?
2017, but we skipped a year.
That's true.
So
well, I did it on my own on my show.
Right. I skipped a year.
and you saying that it's 2017 is a good way for me to remember, because that's the year the George and Tony entertainment show ended, my previous show. And I think you invited me on to talk Christmas Gab Bag because I didn't have a venue to talk anymore. So you were kind enough to invite me to talk Christmas comics on your show in 2017. And we've just been carrying it on ever since. Yeah. And I've been kind of simulcasting it on my show. You've been kind enough to let me do that.
Well, yeah, you got spread the love, spread the Christmas cheer. Sorry, I can't even say it with a straight face. I'm such a Scrooge. Anyway, again, thank you very much for being my partner in this examination of Christmas comics. It's always a delight, and it's fun to discover new things that I would never have even thought of reading because you bring these to the table. So
same here.
Do you want to remind people how they can get a hold of you online if they'd like to converse with you?
We are primarily at Meanwhile ATP on the site formerly known as Twitter and Blue Sky. Blue Sky we plan to be using more in 2025.
Good.
Can't say we're going to really expand our presence on Instagram or Spoutable, but we're at Meanwhile ATP on those two platforms too. And we're at Meanwhile the podcast on Facebook. And I think Facebook might be something we tackle more in 2025 than we have been.
All right. Excellent. All right, George. Like I said, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, New Year, all that good stuff. Be well in the coming year, because it's I always seem to end my shows in a downer. Things are I can't imagine what things are going to be like come January 2025 here in the U.S. Anyway, I'm just going to try and ignore that and just have fun with comics and good friends.
Cue the nervous laughter.
Yes, exactly. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thanks for joining us this year, and we'll talk next year, George. Some more Christmas comics. Yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. If you'd like to leave feedback, you can do so by emailing me at longboxreview@gmail.com. Please send texts or even messages to 208-953-1841. And I'm, of course, on the socials at Longbox Review. And with that, I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.